Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm Andrew Bone. I'm CEO and co-founder of Dayshape. Dayshape is an engagement management and resource planning platform for professional services firms. It's used by some of the largest firms in the world. My background is a blend of industry and technology experience. In the early part of my career, I studied computer science. I worked as a software engineer. Then I changed path and trained as a CA at PwC. Also working for some time in finance at RBS. I started Dayshape with a good friend of mine who was studying for his PhD in AI. Specifically, he was working in the fields of automation and optimization of scheduling. Our vision was to leverage his technology background and my understanding of the industry to create a product that could improve working lives and businesses. And that's what we've done. It's been pretty successful and it's led to me to be speaking to you today from my bedroom. We're clearly in very strange times, as evidenced by this. And I'm here today to talk to you about automation and how we believe it can help accountancy firms, but specifically why we think in a post-COVID world, it's even more important to look at how technology can help. Now, there are many areas of our industry which can benefit from AI and automation. But in professional services, the real driver of productivity and profitability are the people. Fundamentally, firms are selling the knowledge, skills, and time of their people. The people are the most valuable asset. I know it's really cheesy, but it's true. But there's been a big change for those people. The pandemic has seen a huge shift to remote working. It's been well publicized that the big tech companies, Facebook, Google, Twitter, have all extended remote working to nearly all employees, either well into next year or indefinitely. Some large firms, high-profile tenants have given up London offices. Fund manager Schroders has said staff can continue to work flexibly for an indefinite period, and Linklaters, JP Morgan have done very similar things. So in many companies, these things are changing, and not many companies seem to think they're ever going to go back to exactly the way they were before. For many people who are fortunate to be in a professional job where their job security hasn't been massively affected, the novel and largely positive experience of remote working has made staff rethink the attractions of the office workplace. Many people are amazed at how much time and money they're saving by not having to commute every day. And I think many firms are looking at options of going back to a more hybrid model where employees can work from home much more than they ever would have done in the past, but perhaps come into the workplace at certain times of the week or when they need to for certain meetings. Many companies are basically looking at this period of an enforced change as an opportunity to accelerate to a more flexible approach to talent management in the long term. Pre-COVID, the biggest challenge to our customers was often retention. Qualified accountants moving on, which takes knowledge and skills out of the business. Having the right practitioner with the right skills for every engagement was a big challenge. In the US, the AICPA estimated last year that 75% of all CPAs would retire in the next 15 years, and the CPA candidates have been consistently declining in number over the last 3 years. In the UK, it's similar story. ICAEW reported that 20% of chartered accountants in the UK considered quitting their jobs on a weekly basis, with 89% of accountancy and finance employers saying they had experienced the skills shortage. That was the situation pre-COVID. What about now? Well, maybe we'll see some improvements on staff turnover. Maybe job security will be valued more highly by people. But we expect there to be some additional and new challenges if we continue to work from home. A big one is really about how you effectively mentor and engage incoming cohorts of staff. PwC UK posted on LinkedIn just a couple of weeks ago. Today we welcomed over 1,300 new employees to our UK firm. Their start with us this week was made possible by a virtual onboarding and induction process, a lot of planning has taken place to ensure our new joiners have the very best start to their careers with us. And that has been a lot of planning. This is a really new thing for firms to do, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. How do you keep the junior practitioners motivated? How do you get them to do the long hours that are often essential during busy season when they're at home, rather than in an office environment where you've got the camaraderie, where you get the pizza in? That's not going to be the same at all when you're stuck at home on your own. A number of customers were already looking at more flexible talent pools before COVID, and I think that's only going to accelerate. So looking at options such as retired partners being a flexible resource, part-time practitioners who maybe have more entrepreneurial side gigs, but want to be able to earn some extra money at the busy times of year. One big thing that we have really heard loud and clear from many customers is that firms are being driven by the COVID pandemic to become a bit more geographically agnostic. Previously, in many parts of our industry, there would be locally based teams. I spoke to a team recently who had some people in Glasgow, some people in Edinburgh. And if work came up, it was a sort of deals team, so it was a lumpy kind of work. When work came in, they would look for options across Glasgow and Edinburgh to find staff for that. But the pandemic has really challenged their thinking. Why shouldn't they get someone in Manchester or Birmingham or Leeds or London to work on that engagement? There's no good reason not to, because everyone is in the same boat. So that has caused a big challenge to their thinking, a big shift to how they might look at resource management, and that's where we think technology can help, which I'll come on to. Of course, bringing alternative models of labour can benefit profitability and agility, but there are also risks. According to Deloitte's 2019 Global Human Capital Trends survey, they found that 45% of respondents were using alternative, i.e. non-full-time labour in the finance function, but 54% either managed those alternative workers inconsistently or had few or no processes for managing them at all. Engaging alternative workers is also harder than it looks. To do so, companies have to move beyond just managing them to really try and optimize them deliberately and use them well. Not many do. Even amongst companies with policies and standards, a strategic or enterprise-wide approach is rare. So how can automation help? Well, firstly, let's talk about different types of automation already in use in accounting firms. There are many different technologies deployed that can be termed automation, and they exist on a spectrum of complexity. At one end of the spectrum, anything that uses some kind of software and logic does represent some kind of automation. There is a whole software segment known as professional services automation, or PSA software, which many of you will use. These help professional services firms run their businesses, encompassing everything from timesheets, invoicing, and CRM functionality. You could argue about whether there's all that much genuine automation in there, but it's all useful stuff. Taking that logic and making it more configurable, you have things like business rules engines, which can automate certain more fixed processes. Then we have things like RPA, robotic process automation, which can allow you to build pieces of software that then control other pieces of software, allowing you to automate more monotonous tasks, or essentially connect up different systems and processes in a way where you would have traditionally needed to put people in the middle of those systems to be the glue between them. And at the more AI end of the spectrum, we have things like combinatorial optimization and machine learning, which are technically more advanced, can automate more complex tasks. But the point I want to say here is that automation can take lots of different technical forms, and one isn't necessarily better than the other. In fact, I would argue that really the value to the end business is nothing to do with how complex the technology is. It's really about how it's used, and choosing the right tool for the right job. We've certainly seen sometimes that even the simplest feature in our product from a technical perspective can deliver enormous benefit. So let me get to the key point. COVID is changing how people think about work and how they want to work. Firms are changing how they think about resource management, realizing that there's no need to be limited geographically. And that adds up to tremendous opportunity to do things better. But both these things do also make the process of resource management more complex and more difficult because suddenly there's so many more options available. Let me give you an example. A client engagement needs some help. It's running behind schedule. They need a senior associate for 2 weeks. And you're the resource manager. It's your decision who to assign to this work. What do you do? Well, traditionally, you might have looked at who in your pool of local staff was available. But now you could look nationwide. You could look at your bench of temporary workers, part-time employees or contractors. You ought to be considering all kinds of other factors like not just who is available, but who's expressed an interest in that kind of work. Who might have a lower charge-out rate that would have the least impact on the margin or recovery of the engagement? Whose continuity on that work? There are lots of other things that you should be considering, but when you're dealing with just a single request like this or hundreds of similar requests, it just becomes unmanageable. That's really where automation and optimization can be hugely valuable. Automated optimization in these situations allows you to ensure assignments are made fairly and based on the best fit for skill, availability, independence, accreditations, and all kinds of other factors. They also do allow you to have the bandwidth and the scope to think about practitioners' preferences and personal development needs, helping to really build that loyalty to the firm, improving mental health when all these things are under pressure given the changing work environment. Finally, automation allows you to really maximize your talent pool, deliver the best possible service you can at the best margins, and make the best use of the people you have. But outside of purely looking at resource management and planning, there are other ways that automation can help. I'm sure I don't need to tell this audience about the pressures that the industry has already been facing on regulatory issues, fines and ring fencing and so on. But I think it's also worth noting that working from home and all this new flexibility potentially also introduces new risks. There are risks around the visibility of people's work. When everyone's working from home, you can't literally see what they're up to. There are risks around compliance because you can't necessarily always know that people are following the right procedures and processes. And there's certainly a risk, big challenges around learning because, particularly for more junior members of staff, they miss out on that mentorship, that ability to just ask a quick question across the desk to someone who's done it before. We found that in our company, and I think it's widespread across many companies, that junior people do struggle a bit more, and it's such a key part of bringing new talent into the accountancy profession is people who are in their traineeship. So how can automation help with those things? Well, for one, it can help with the visibility of how work is progressing. So it can give people a solution to really understand how we are getting on in any given particular piece of work, when maybe the more traditional route of just going tapping the manager on the shoulder is a little less viable. Evidence to the Treasury Select Committee last year showed that a significant portion of audits already go over budget. And for some media, that was portrayed as being almost, is audit a loss leading activity. But I think in reality, it's far more commonly the case that they're just going over budget out of poor planning and poor monitoring rather than any sort of nefarious conspiracy theory. But how can automation help that? Well, it basically can give people foresight. We find often that managers are expected to pull data from a range of different systems in order to understand where an engagement is right now. What have we spent so far? What is still in the budget? Who's still booked to be on this job? How are the team getting on with the work that they're doing? All these things certainly don't become any easier when everyone's working from home. And yeah, if you can make a system that does this and you can put that in place, then automating that process, firstly, you get, of course, all the automation benefits that you would expect. It's more efficient, it saves time, it saves manager time, important members of staff, key members of staff who really should be working on client-facing activities as much as possible. So you get the efficiency, but also it's just done better. There's less error prone, it's done more consistently, and it can be done more frequently, so that anyone in the firm, or certainly any partners who are leading engagements, can see at any point in time, when it's convenient for them, how that engagement is progressing, and just having that dashboard sort of view of performance. So it's not as sophisticated as a sort of AI type of automation, but it's still a massively useful automation that can be introduced to firms and really help. And I think is particularly key when we're in this world where getting that visibility is even more difficult than it was before. To wrap up, COVID changes everything. Staff expect different things from their employers. Firms need to change how they operate, and even client expectations may be different from before. In addition, there's regulatory pressures that were already there are now compounded by new risks related to more home working. Technology can help to mitigate some of those compliance risks, and also it creates opportunities for firms to work smarter in how they do resource management, helping to boost profitability and staff happiness and retention. Thanks very much for listening. My team and I will be really delighted to chat to more of you in our virtual booth. Thanks again.